Unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard Trump talking about tariffs, and whether you're a fan of Trump or not, I don't really think it matters. I think you should be watching this closely if you're an investor. So for today, I've compiled 7 stocks that I believe could benefit the most if the tariffs were to go into effect. But before I jump straight in, I want to briefly go over what the tariffs being passed would actually do. Trump's 25% tariffs would raise the cost on imported goods including steel, aluminum, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and automobiles. US manufacturers will gain a competitive edge as foreign competition decreases, domestic production will increase while supply chains will shift to rely more on US made materials, and consumer products will likely see a rise due to increased cost in components and materials. So what 7 companies would see a huge benefit? Let's look. For our first ticker, we have X, which is US Steel. With the higher domestic demand needed if we do end up getting into a tariff on steel, it would reduce the foreign competition for X, and it would cause them to have to raise their production, but with the raised production, they would see raise in profits and sales. It's currently sitting up about 14% on the year. With talks of the tariffs earlier in the year, it definitely pumped this stock up a little bit. I'm still thinking it's got plenty of room to grow if those tariffs actually do end up passing, though. Next up, we have ticker AA for Alcoa. Increased aluminum prices favor U.S. producers. With Alcoa being a top tier aluminum producer, it definitely sets them up for success. They kind of have the same story as U.S. Steel. If the tariffs go into effect with that 25% increase on the aluminum price from foreign companies, Alcoa's aluminum would be far cheaper than any of the foreign companies, and they would still have room to increase their price to get better margins than they currently do. And currently, Alcoa is trading down 5.25% year to date, partially due to the fact that aluminum has seen a decrease in demand. But if you look at how much of the aluminum is actually imported, it sits pretty close to 50%. Taking away that 50% of imported aluminum would leave Alcoa in a very, very good spot to reap a lot of benefits if the tariff were to go through and cause them to be the number one supplier of aluminum in the US. Our third company being Intel. Tariffs on imported semiconductors drive demand for US made chips. We've already seen Intel doing amazing things this week in talks with TSM and looking at making some agreements there. I think Intel has an absolutely amazing spot going into this if the tariffs do end up passing. But with Intel sitting up almost 27% year to date, I don't know if it's a little too late on this play or not. I know there's a lot of other videos out there that kind of break down Intel a little bit more, so I don't want to dive too much into it, but it also would have just felt weird for me to leave off the list. Next up, we have ticker MU for Micron. Micron is a memory and storage supplier that would see a huge benefit in that shift away from the Chinese suppliers. A lot like Intel, Micron is already up a good bit on the year, sitting up around 23%. I still think Micron has plenty of room to grow. Because the tariffs would make imported memory more expensive, US companies may actually kind of turn to Micron as their go-to supplier, which would absolutely cause their stock to skyrocket. Next up, we have ticker PFE for Pfizer. With Pfizer being the largest pharmaceutical sales company in the US, they will be able to gain a competitive edge very fast if the tariffs were to be passed, as imported pharmaceuticals will become more expensive. We saw how Pfizer took advantage of the whole COVID situation, and they really pumped out a lot of stuff in that time period. And if it got to the point that foreign pharmaceuticals got too expensive, I could easily see Pfizer picking up the weight and being able to make some big profits off of that. Pfizer is currently sitting at $25.91 a share, down 3.14% on the year. And if all the tariffs actually go through and it's not just talk, Pfizer stands to make a very good amount of money off of all this. Next up, we have ticker F for Ford. Ford would have a good advantage as imported vehicles would face higher costs. Higher tariffs would also make the Chinese EVs more expensive in the US, reducing their appeal to customers and giving Ford a stronger competitive position in the market. If the Chinese EVs become less affordable, US consumers will have fewer low-cost options, potentially increasing demand for Ford EVs like the Mustang Mach-E, F-150 Lightning, and upcoming models. Less competition from the low-cost Chinese EVs would also allow Ford to maintain or even increase prices without the pressure of undercutting competitors and improving their profit margins. The tariffs could also come with an additional government incentives for domestic automakers, such as expanded EV tax credits, grants, subsidies for US battery manufacturing, all of which could easily benefit Ford. And on the flip side of potential global retaliation plays, if China retaliates with tariffs on US auto exports, Ford is less exposed than GM and Tesla, which sell more cars in China. Ford's focus on North America and Europe means it could be less affected by the trade wars. Ford is currently sitting down almost 6% year to date, but in my opinion, I think this is a really good buy. I think that the stock price being down this much is a little bit oversold, and I feel like I'm getting a very good deal whenever I buy Ford. Next up, we have Tesla, ticker TSLA. Tesla's in the same boat as Ford, being that they have a lot of their manufacturing done in the US. The biggest difference is Tesla does have a lot more exposure overseas, as they do sell a lot of vehicles in China and other countries. But one thing that Tesla has that Ford doesn't is Daddy Trump in their back pocket. Part of the reason I think that Trump included these big tariffs on automobiles was because of Elon, as Elon does stand to gain a lot. I know that Trump did talk about this back in 2020, as well, but I feel like he's been a little bit more pressured to kind of get after it. He's been talking about it a lot more, and it seems that this is actually going to come to fruition now, but we will see in the coming months. I do think Tesla has a very solid bull case with a cult-like following and a lot of upside. One thing that does concern me is how high they are right now. Tesla's currently trading at a crazy PE ratio, and I don't know how long this growth can be sustained for. So a lot like Intel, I do think there is still a lot of upside to Tesla, but the only reason I'm putting this on the list is I would feel stupid not to. Be careful with this one. I do think that Tesla could fall in price just as fast as it climbed, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And that wraps it up. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe for Donut. Peace out.